Good, thank you, Dom. Welcome everyone to the May 2014 Conservation Commission meeting, typically the last meeting of our season. As we tend to take the summer off, my sense is we'll not be taking too much of the summer off with some of the projects that are on our menu, on our plate. Don't envision a long meeting tonight, just wanted to share what hopefully folks in the community have already become pretty aware of over the past several months, actually years, two conservation projects that'll be on the town warrant a week from tonight that will residents will have an opportunity to vote on. And funding for those two conservation projects we'll touch on here tonight comes from our Open Space Conservation Fund. And so that's really the main points we want to share tonight. We want to try to get the best turnout we can at town meeting. And
when is town meeting?
Town meeting is June 3rd at 7 p.m. at the Jordan Small School. And
it's a week
from tonight. It's a week from tonight. So there's a couple other items we're going to touch on. Bill wanted to update us on some kiosk information relative to some of the trails that we've been working on improving around town. And we should touch on some watershed issues because we have some folks here from Panther Pond that are interested in that. And Ben, if you can perhaps at the end give us a brief snapshot of your milfoil article and where we're at with invasives. We'll just wrap up with that.
I'll make it very short.
And as a short piece, I'm trying to think what else there is. There are a number of articles in the warrant that we'll be voting on relative to shoreline zone or parking lots and shoreline zone issues. Those are things that are really best understood by getting a strong cup of coffee early in the day and sitting down and reading through those a couple times to really be informed. I think we won't spend time on that tonight, but my general sense is that those articles having to do with our rules in town, the ordinances, there's a tremendous amount of work that the planning board does to get those polished up, and they have generally a very competent set of professionals that support them. We're lucky to have Sebago Technics supporting our planning and engineering functions in Raymond, and they're certainly a well-established engineering firm, environmental engineering firm. So, to the two articles of focus for the Conservation Commission will be Article 9 and Article 10 that we'll be voting on. It looks like they follow some of these planning board rule changes that will come up first. So hopefully by about 7:30 we'll be into Article 9, which says to see if the town will vote to appropriate $15,000 from the Open Space Fund to donate to the Boy Scouts Pine Tree Council for the purchase of a 30-acre parcel of land along the southeastern side of the Tenney River for conservation purposes. Conservation Commission recommends Article 9, the Selectmen recommend Article 9, the Budget Finance Committee recommends Article 9. So that is hopefully will sail through without too much resistance. 1,000 feet of conservation preservation on the Tenney River. For this investment from the town, from our funds that we've already set aside in our open space fund, that's a great value, whereas the cost of the land that's being protected is probably 20 times that anyways. And there's certainly some other private functions that'll be supporting that project. The local residents there have been working on it for several years now. A lot of good planning is involved and in it, and the Luneco Land Trust has also supported the project and would be holding the conservation easement on that property. So that is a go vote from our perspective, and open up to anyone who has any questions or comments on.
Are we allowed to ask?
And in our forum, we're pretty loose and easy here in the Conservation Commission. So go ahead, shoot away.
I just wonder how long is that $15,000 grant good for? Is it good for ever, or is it good for 10 years?
So that would go towards the purchase of that property. So it would be in perpetuity. The conservation protections would run in perpetuity with the land. The Boy Scouts will own it, as they do own the adjacent land, and the land will be protected in accordance with the conservation easement document, which says what you can and can't do, generally not build houses, not have commercial activities, and let them continue with the undeveloped natural state of that property. Certainly some walking trails would be appropriate.
Are they working with Luneco Trust to create that easement?
Yes, they are, and they are. There's a draft easement that's in place, and actually it's pretty far along. I think it's ready to be signed, pending the approval by the town of this funding, so we're not the last piece in. They have another chunk of private fundraising they need to do, and they'll certainly, if you live on or around the Tenney River or Panther Pond, you might expect a phone call or a letter. Or more. But they're getting pretty close, and it's an excellent project, a well-planned project, so certainly one that makes sense to.
And again, with this $15,000, it's already been assessed, it's already been collected, it sits in our open space fund, which is already, there's going to be no further cost.
Correct.
Towns pay or taxpayers at this point, because the open space fund money is already there.
That's correct, yeah. Right. There would be no tax this year or going forward, because that money's been set aside. And where that money comes from, just so everyone to be clear, and it applies to the next article as well, is that when land that's in the tree growth protection law for the state of Maine, which gives a substantial tax break to large landowners that pledge to manage their lands in accordance with tree growth tax law, when they pull out of that and choose to elect to remove themselves from that program, where they had been getting significant tax breaks, they have to pay a back tax, and that back tax is where we've been capturing those funds in our open space fund. And that mechanism has worked well for us. It's served for funding couple other projects. The Files Road property on Egypt Road, and the 15-acre piece that went on to Morgan Meadow a couple years back, all came from the Raymond Open Space Fund, funded by withdrawals from the tree growth program. So that's a good point for folks to know about, Russ. The next Article 10 is, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I didn't want to interrupt with further discussion, but do you know what has been established as the purchase price for that parcel? What the 15,000 is applied to?
I'm gonna, I don't have a fixed number, but I'm gonna say it's on the order of $230,000 in that range, plus or minus.
And the Luneco Trust is an entity that is being basically created and administered by Raymond residents.
The land trust actually has been in existence since about the late 80s when it formulated, and followed the model of many other land trusts in the state and country. I mean, Maine's certainly been a leader in formation of land trusts. But so it's a entity with a board and a voting board and a membership, and their mission is to support land conservation, and they are a registered federal and state nonprofit.
And working really closely with the Boy Scouts. You know, I think it's a really clever shift to move that into their participation in this, that it becomes much more of a public entity rather than just
Private
landowners.
conservation.
Yeah. Is it a perpetual conservation easement?
It is.
You understand
That's what it is.
Yeah, so not just a tax break, but really a perpetual easement?
Conserved in perpetuity is the language in the easement.
Yeah,
And so,
yeah.
you know, there's duties on the scouts, to be clear, to stick to the conservation purposes of the easement document, and the land trust, because they're the landowner. The land trust has the authority to enforce those purposes if they're being violated, and in fact, they monitor once a year. They'll walk the property.
It gives them structure for this thing that's established already.
Yep.
You'll be talking about it later, but the watershed protection aspects of this are significant, really significant.
If you start adding up parcels around the watersheds, you're absolutely right. And this piece has 30 acres of wetland, which would and adjacent land, not just wetland. The wetland certainly serves as a protection to the watershed, but there was probably 25 of those acres were developable, 20 to 25, and so that won't happen. And it'll stay in the scouts, you know, kind of natural or wilderness area part of their program. So Article 10 is our next conservation article. It is similar in nature. It's lakeside watershed protection, looking through one lens anyways, but it has a much greater scale at 350 acres, more than 10 times the size of the Tenney project, and it includes Pismire Mountain on Crescent Lake. And in this case, the article reads, to see if the town will vote to appropriate $30,000 from the Open Space Fund and an additional $20,000 from the Timber Harvest Funds for a total of $50,000 towards the purchase of 347 acres along Coneska Road, including Pismire Mountain, known as the Raymond Community Forest Project. Expenditure of these funds will be contingent on successful state, federal, and private foundation grant awards and local fundraising. The agreement to exercise an option to buy the land for $506,000 from Hancock Land Company expires on December 31st, 2014. So in this case, Conservation Commission recommends Article 10, as we'd expect. The selectmen make no recommendation, and the Budget Finance Committee does not recommend Article 10. So apparently we were unable to sway our neighbors on the Budget Finance Committee for this project. We've got a handout here that we'll have at town meeting, and that you folks have, and that is posted on the web, I believe, and that is circulated in the Wyndham Eagle as of last Friday. Thank you, Marley, for coming and pointing that out to us. Page 5. Come have a seat here, Marley.
You were missing a copy.
Excellent. There it is. Page 5 of the last Friday's Wyndham Eagle News covers the project in detail. This has been in the works almost as long as the Tenny River project. It represents a little different structure. We don't have the Boy Scouts involved. But the way this project would work is for the town of Raymond ultimately to take ownership of the property, and in a similar way to the Tenny project, to have an agreement with Luneco to hold the conservation easement on it. We would, as a town, we'd have full recreational opportunities, trails, and all the watershed protection benefits and habitat protection that comes with it, in addition to the rights to commercially harvest the property for timber, and do that in a selection cut approach that would be compatible with watershed protection and habitat enhancement and recreational trails. There's a spectacular view from the top of Pismire Mountain, where there are rough trails to up already, and there's certainly some trail improvements that would need to happen on this parcel. But this project has a timeline that goes out for 2 more years, another 1.5 years, and this vote next week is just step 1 in approving funding for the project. And if we're successful with the state and federal and private foundation grants that have been submitted for this project, we would be getting this property and resource and protecting it for about 10 cents on the dollar. And you can't do that. You can't do that very often these days.
Never.
So, any questions from anyone here on the board or from our audience?
You mentioned fundraising. Is there anything preventing us from raising more than what is necessary to make the entire purchase?
There's nothing.
So what I'm getting at is, in theory, if we have some great fundraising, we could not even spend our $30,000 and $20,000.
You're right, Bill.
Or is
And
that-
no, you're right about that. The article would authorize the selectmen to spend up to $30,000
Okay.
in the event we get these we're contingent on these being successful with the other grants, which includes local fundraising. So if we hit a home run with the local fundraising and all the grants, then there's a chance that we wouldn't have to draw that full 30 out of our open space fund. So right now, our open space fund has about $50,000 in it. We're committing $15,000 to the Tenny River project, free and clear, ready to go. Money that's already been set aside, saved in the piggy bank over the last decade for just these type of projects. If we spend 30 on the Raymond Community Forest, that will leave us about $5,000 to continue our efforts. But it'll also mean we'll need to raise $20,000 from the town's timber harvest funds. And our understanding is that the timber harvest funds that may be available right now would support that draw, and that there would certainly be timber harvest revenue from the Pismire Mountain project in the course of time. There could be some in a relatively short timeline associated with trail building, that would be modest probably, but not insignificant. And then we'd probably be on a timeline of 8 to 10 years or more before we did a good selection cut in there to replenish the town's timber harvest funds. So that is that's the two big projects on the warrant for a week from tonight. And again, I think the message is that it'd be too bad to extinguish this opportunity for Raymond next week before it even has a chance to get off the ground. And I think that'll be the message we'll want to share with everybody. Go ahead, Marley.
Have you been hearing any comments?
Have not been hearing any comments, haven't had any strong naysayers or newspaper or other media outlets, other postings. Our mission, I think our mission with the use of the property, we work to have it broad enough to provide something for everyone, whether it's a snow machine trail, access that might connect to some of the Black Cat Mountain trails off of Crescent Lake, or the Bartlett Brook trail that goes up towards Raymond Pond, if there's a loop that is connectable that takes folks up to the one of the better views in town, then we've got that. There'll be entirely possible to have the hiking trails converted to ski trails and snowshoe trails in the winter. You know, we haven't ruled out the idea of a limited area for you know, motorized recreation. That would obviously be somewhat controversial, but and we're not going into this project with a pledge that will happen, but we're certainly open to discussing that if the project goes forward in a, you know, modest portion of the property.
I just want to say, I think that we're really helpful that every resident in the town can read this.
Great,
I found it very informative.
great article. It's our best outreach, and we should be on the web with that as well, I believe.
We can probably get that article from the Wyndham Eagle website, right?
Yeah, you certainly could, you certainly could.
www.wyndhameagle.com.
Yeah. So.
Can I just,
chime in.
Is there any sense, the latter two groups have not recommended, and any sense as to the whys?
I don't have a good sense of that, Ben, and it's a good point, and we ought to have a good sense of that
Before we go in.
into the town meeting next week.
I mean, I can see where I could hypothesize or presume on the finance side why they might not recommend it, but
Mhm.
I'm just curious, particularly for the selectmen, as to why there clearly must have been a break, and I haven't watched it online.
We had, through the 2 years of discussion with the selectmen, they had questions for us and information they needed when we started, which was
Right.
2 years ago, 2012. And we provided that. We had a positive meeting with them in 2013. I'm gonna say it was the summer of 2013, and they showed general support for the structure of it. There was a meeting this winter. Russ, give us a clip of that. I was not there, I was out of town on business.
December or so, there was a meeting that they were open and receptive to it at that time. And then, I think the March meeting, there was some questions that they had, and they started to back away from it at that point. And it's not entirely clear as to what their full reasoning was at that
It
time.
would be helpful if we,
We could have the answers to that.
obviously.
Yeah.
Right.
That's good, Ben, thank
So
you.
somebody should call the budget committee.
Yep, we'll touch base with both those committees.
And there was enough interest and positive feedback that Lou Necco went forward with the proposition based on a perception of support from the select board. I think
Okay.
back in the December
In
meeting.
the earlier meeting, right,
Right,
that's right.
December or January, I'm not sure which
Yeah.
one.
Yeah.
All right, good, thank you.
Go ahead.
I've got a stupid question. What, I know it says that these funds are coming from the open, what's it called?
Open Space Fund.
Where do those funds come from?
So we created that fund in 2004, I'm gonna say, might have been 2005, for the purpose of having a fund that would provide the town's portion of grant applications when you go after the bigger state and federal money.
So it's grant money?
The grant money that we apply for requires the town to make a contribution as well. So it's town money, for sure.
So it's tax money?
It's town money, and where it came from is when folks, as we talked earlier, when folks remove their property from the tree growth program, they pay a penalty tax because they've been getting a break for every year they were in it, and it's a significant break because they'd pledged to manage their land for timber, not develop it. And so when they pull out of that for whatever reason, if they want to develop it or the property's changing hands or whatever, they pay a back tax. That back tax goes into the open space reserve account. So the mechanism is somewhat self-sustaining, or
It is contributed to periodically.
it's very periodically, and for the last decade, with not a lot of development going on at all, there hasn't been much land coming out of tree growth, so there hasn't been much money coming into the open space fund. Early, the 90s was another deal altogether, and unfortunately, we hadn't set the fund up at that time. But we caught a little bit of the tail of it in '04, '05, and had some large parcels in Raymond that came out of tree growth for development, and so those tax penalties came over to the open space fund.
And I don't know when it was voted, but we had a couple of warrants previously where, and it might have been the seed money that started this fund. I don't know whether it was the open space or the conservation fund, but there were warrants on the town article to set aside monies. I think it was 5,000 one year and 20,000 another year, and that was kind of, I think got this fund up.
You're absolutely right, Russ, and that
But
was
that might have been prior
taxpayer
to-
money.
That
I mean,
was
that
taxpayer money.
that was a very good correction. I think we seeded it with $25,000, and over the next 4 or 5 years, we had articles to add to it. They weren't as generous as that, and only one of those might have passed. And so I'm gonna say that maybe $30,000 total came from original taxpayer seed money, and then someone came up, some bright planner came up with the idea that we use tree growth penalty money to sustain the fund, and so we haven't asked the town for money since the mid-2000s, mid-2006 maybe.
Is it likely that the Hancock Land Company owner of this parcel is benefiting from that tax break now?
The parcels were in tree growth, and they are right now, they're still in tree growth, so for sure, I mean, they were managing it for timber, they cut it in 2007 or so.
30 years, so.
They've certainly seen some benefit from that program. And important to point out also that I believe the appraised value of that project, of that land, was $600,000. And Hancock was willing to drop that by $100,000 from market appraised amount to help make the project go forward.
And prior to that, he was gonna develop it at one time, right?
There have been several iterations.
Yeah.
There've been several iterations, and some of those were fairly aggressive in terms of numbers of lots.
So, coming back to your comments and questions about the watershed, this is a significant parcel of woodland that also protects the Sebago Lake
Yeah.
watershed and flows into Crescent, on into Panther, and on down into Sebago, so it certainly does benefit the watershed to have this much land protected.
one interesting statistic that folks that have been in watershed work around the town for the last decade or two, we've had 5 grants maybe from Section 319 of the Clean Water Act to fund watershed protection activities, fixing driveways, roads, culverts, so forth, or keeping sand and phosphorus, mobile phosphorus, out of the lakes and doing land and landscaping practice properly. Those have not been small. Those have been tens to hundreds of thousands of dollars that have come from federal funds, as well as in-kind donations from the town of Raymond. Crescent Lake 1 and 2, and Panther 1 and 2. Did you guys do 3? I don't know.
No, just 1 and 2.
1 and 2, but those were how many $30,000 grants spent?
The second one
Round
was
numbers?
probably 65,000.
Yep.
You've seen that on Penny.
And you've seen the work that they've done, and so that touches presumably, and hopefully, and I trust, the kind of hot spots in the watershed. From an acreage perspective, probably 20 acres maybe of protected land, if that. I mean, you're focusing on a driveway or a big erosion site.
And Panther Pond is in the process of updating the Watershed Survey with the idea that Panther Pond Association and the members around the lake themselves may do their own 319.
Good for them.
I don't know if, I think once you get 2 319s under your belt,
The feds are ready to cut you off
they look elsewhere now, and, but Panther I think were the best in the state,
Yes, you were.
in terms of, what we were able to do,
Yeah.
over time. And Crescent now is doing is into its second one,
Yeah.
and all. So.
We'll get Loon Echo to apply.
So,
Get Loon Echo to apply.
so I think that where I was going was that preserving a piece of land like this for the town's investment of $50,000, which is comparable to maybe a 1 or 2 year grant for a watershed protection, protects 350 acres. I mean, it's from a watershed protection standpoint, compared to the grant process for fixing developed land, it's a good value. It's a great value. So, everyone's probably all heard this more than enough, but it's good to, there's been some good gaps here filled, and I think with regard to where our funding has come from and the side of the funding nut that will need to be raised going forward. Any other questions on the conservation articles?
Nay.
While we're in the water realm, should we, I want you to give us a quick update on the milfoil bill that passed and that Mike helped with,
LD 1626.
1626, and then maybe we'll finish up with you folks in terms of watery stuff. You had some Panther Pond questions, and then I want to have Bill give us a quick thing on our trail kiosks.
Okay, I'll just do a quick on, it was called LD 1626. It started because RWPA, Raymond Waterways Protective Association, in discussions with a family over in Sebago Lake at Turtle Cove, when they realized that the money that we got to control milfoil was only that the associations around the state each got about $6,000, and that when it costs roughly $800 to $1,200 a day to run a staff, that $6,000 doesn't get you very far. And this one family just went and talked to Mike McClellan, our representative, and lo and behold, they wrote a bill. And Bob Chapin, who's the president of RWPA, and I, and some others, spent time in Augusta and learned how the process works, and spoke in front of the committee.
Awesome.
And
You bet.
there is, what we're waiting for right now is we wanted to increase the milfoil sticker by $5. It's now 10, we wanted it to be an extra 5, and to specifically say that it would be used for plant control, would not be used administratively and that sort of thing. As you know, there is, the word tax or user fee does not go down well, and so, but the governor recognized the importance of clean water and keeping milfoil out of the lakes, and so they found a way to they found funds. We don't know exactly how much. I've seen some numbers, but I'll hold those because they're not official. And what we're waiting for now is to see what extra amount of funds we actually are going to get this year, and will continue presumably in the upcoming years. It's still not enough to do all the work that we need to do, but it is at least a recognition by the state that the amount of funds were terribly inadequate. And so,
So watershed associations around the state might expect, if they apply properly, to see a little bit of a kick in their annual.
well, I would like it to be about double what we're getting, but I don't know if that's going to happen. And that still is small,
Yeah.
but at least what we were pleased with was that both sides of the aisle recognized the problem.
It wasn't enough.
Okay, and
Right.
so they were willing, and so they worked out a compromise. And our hope is that, and I think a lot of people were surprised that this one woman, frankly, talking with representative, was able to get a bill put together, and we are actually going to get some money now. So, because people worked very hard back in 2000, 2002 to get the milfoil sticker and all of that to begin with.
Yeah.
And I've been around now since, 2000, it's hard to believe I've been home this long, and no one ever has talked about the possibility of going to the state or going to the legislature and trying to increase the amount, until this one interaction that we had with this one family, and she is a whippersnapper, and she got things done, and it's been an interesting ride. And
That's great. And Mike McClellan was a big part of that, right?
oh, Mike, absolutely,
Yep.
absolutely, just no question about it.
That's
And
great.
Ann, I can't think of Ann's last, she's the senator on the Republican side. Her husband is a retired, I think a warden on Panther Pond. And she was very, very helpful,
Great.
because she was on the committee. And I apologize for not remembering your name. I just saw them at Hannaford yesterday, I remember. But she was very, very helpful, and that was on the Republican side,
Great.
so.
Good progress.
Yeah.
Good job, Ben, seeing the system
Now, but
through
we
and-
still don't have enough money, and that's
Right.
one of our issues. If you go back and read 2 weeks ago in the Eagle, you will see, I was interviewed by the head of the editor-in-chief, and I think you'll see the arguments that we're making about why we need more funds and the problems that we're faced with. And that we've got to figure out a way to get people to understand that milfoil is the silent thief in our economy. That if we don't do something about it and do it in a managed way, that you're going to end up with Lake Arrowhead. If people have read about Lake Arrowhead, where it's an unusual lake, there's no question, but the landowners with all the milfoil, they were actually able, when they were going through their assessment, they reduced the values of the properties by 10 to 20%. And you can imagine the impact that has on
Town budget.
a town budget. I'm not saying that would happen here, it would happen slowly.
Right.
And it's that sort of insidious part if we don't, that's why I call it the silent enemy. Anyway, I'd better stop there, okay, because I could go on.
That's good. That's awesome, Ben. Thanks for going through, pushing through and seeing the system, making sure it's still working. It sounds like it is, and,
We've gone through some changes in our WPA.
Right.
We tried to go with a full-time executive director. That business model didn't work, so we've gone to a part-time for the moment. I think that's eventually going to work. We're very pleased with Jeff Stern, who has a lot of experience. And we have a new president, Bob Chapin, ex-military, Air Force, and he's very good. And we're pleased with the way he operates. So I'm quite positive, but we still have the challenge to increase the amount of money that flows and to demonstrate that we can really do it.
Do it, yeah. Excellent. Excellent. Did you folks have something you wanted to share, or just wanted to be, hear the commission?
Just, it's your last meeting, we're sober people here early and wanted to find out what's going on. And
Good.
I expected that there was, I'm really impressed with the turnout tonight at the meeting. This place was hard finding parking spaces.
Of course, those folks are all, yeah, we're piping this show in by live wire through the auditorium.
Could you tell us who you are? Would you introduce yourself?
Go ahead, Bill.
Bill Fraser, been a member about 8 years, 9 years, somewhere in there. Time flies, huh?
Yeah.
Nice to meet you.
John Rand, I'm the chair, and I've been on since my mom was on, and
You were part of it.
so it's been a good long time, but have enjoyed keeping it going, and I'm waiting to get impeached, and it hasn't happened yet.
Term
Please,
limits.
please,
Term limits,
please.
I'm waiting for someone to put term limits on
Too
it.
good.
And I'm Marley Turner, and I was originally on when his mother was chair. She brought cookies. And,
That's why John might be impeached, because he hasn't.
anyway, and then I was away for a while, and then I came back, and I'm really very glad to be back on. And I learned a lot.
I'm Ben Severn. As I said, I was involved with the founding of the Pathapon Association, eventually president for a few years, and then thought I was going to get away from doing all of this, and certain things happened in RWPA, and so I didn't step back fast enough, and so I've been involved with RWPA now for 4 or 5 years, I guess. Before, I used to sit, and I would be one of the ones, when John was sort of heading up a lot of it, that I'd lick the envelopes and that sort of thing. But I've been doing a little bit more than that since then, and it's a real challenge, but that's who I am.
Russ Hutchinson, I live in North Raymond, and been on the commission for more years than I want to admit, back to when Marley and Priscilla were first on the commission. So.
Thank you all from us for.
Yeah, thank you
All
very
right.
much.
Thank you
For
very
us that have gone out of the state and come back to this,
And what are your names?
doing a good job.
Thank you.
I'm Phil Cooper, and this is my wife Claudia. I was also hoping to meet my cousin, Alyssa Gifford.
Alyssa's your cousin, okay?
Okay.
The
And-
families have been here literally for almost 100 years.
Oh,
Oh,
right,
wonderful.
right.
Is she
Grandfathers.
still on the commission?
She
She-
Off right now.
resigned
Yeah.
about a year ago, I'm
Yeah,
gonna say,
right,
and was our leader for terrestrial invasive plants, being the master gardener that she is, and stayed up on things like the emerald ash borer and some of the invasive
That bamboo she does deal.
and bamboo is probably one of them. I think that she had an opportunity that was closer to that type of stuff with a cooperative extension, I think, and if my memory serves me, and so she felt she could probably apply herself more there.
Thank you very much.
Good, thanks for coming out, folks.
Thank you.
It's always good to have an audience, and Deb, thanks for being here, yeah, this is huge, this is a big night. Big night.
Does the sun shine here?
It does, it hasn't had much luck in the recent
Not this week.
Oh,
couple.
my
It's
goodness.
July 14th through about the 28th. That's what I would.
I don't ever, we've been coming up here for years and years, and I don't ever remember it being so cold.
It's
and
cold, yeah,
wet.
today was cold, boy,
Yes.
it
It
was,
wasn't even 50.
It's
Right.
been a tough
It's been a
winter.
tough
Yeah,
year.
I
Winter.
know. We moved down to Florida, and we're there for 15 years, and then they call us halfbacks, we're in North Carolina. And, oh, I'm sorry.
You would like to adjourn?
I've for a chat.
We would like to adjourn. We're gonna give Bill five minutes.
Okay.
To talk about kiosks.
I can do it in 3.
Excellent, that's
Ready?
even better.
Go. Okay, a few years back, we did some trail mapping in Morgan Meadow. And John and myself and, I can't remember when that, Steve and Louise,
Oh, that, yeah.
there was a bunch of us. We did it in the winter. Wasn't it the winter?
Yep.
Yeah.
Track.
And since that time, we've wanted to get a kiosk to identify the trails. So when you go that little parking area off of Egypt, you can get an idea of what trails are there, how the distance, where they go, things of that nature. We haven't had a real push to complete that kiosk project. It's probably a little bit of my fault. And I haven't really pushed much only because there's a couple of schools of thought about the kiosk. Some seem to think that it's only going to get vandalized. Another reason I haven't pushed is because IF&W was considering changing the main entrance from the Raymond little parking area over to one that's just over into under the gray line. I haven't heard anything really from them. And then a third thing is the town had agreed to plow it so we'd have year-round access, because it's might even be better for winter use for cross-country skiing and snowshoeing. But so far there's been a communication breakdown and there hasn't been any consistency with the plowing, but we still would like to go forward. And I have a gentleman who does, he's my handyman at home. He does custom work, he does excellent work.
He builds kiosks?
He can build anything. Literally anything. Can't tell you his name. But he's very reasonable. He's always got room in his schedule to take on another project, and I'd like to use him to build at least one kiosk, and maybe if that one goes well, maybe another one over at the parking area on North Raymond Road.
Yes, yeah.
That would kind of connect all of Morgan Meadow.
Deb, do you know who built the one over here on the nice trail system by the Frog Pond? Who built that? Do you remember?
And
But-
No, Tom Gumbel would know, he's the,
Tom's the grounds
yeah.
person who I met this Saturday with Mr. Dion. Not Mr. Dion, but Mr.,
Fitch?
no,
I will almost guarantee that.
Keller. So I'd be all ears to
Okay.
have him do that, Bill. I don't know if we'll be spending public money, if we have to do something complicated. I'm assuming we may not, because it's a relatively small
Right.
piece. I guess I'll check with Don to see if we want to spend, I gotta believe we're spending $800, $1,000 labor materials on a nice kiosk, assuming that people aren't donating everything free. And that would be a valuable thing. And we have money from the Morgan Meadow endowment to do that very thing.
Yeah.
And so we could do one there, we could do one at North Raymond Road.
North Raymond Road.
And if the Tenny the Tenny's gonna go through, but we'd be well-trained in how to do them
Right.
by
And
the
then
time Pismire came around. If it
if
ever does.
Pismire does, if it goes through to completion, then yeah, it'd be great to, well, we're gonna probably need some kiosks there.
Can you have your guy go look at this one here and just get us a rough
Sure.
number
Sure.
for how much it would be? And we'll find out what the rules are for spending public money on having kiosks built.
John,
Yes,
I wonder if you could review why
name is-
we want the kiosk, what is it going to do?
Identify the trails.
So you have a trail map on it.
Right. Distances, location, elevation maybe?
at Morgan Meadow, you'd have a little history pamphlet on the property itself, potentially.
Right?
Wildlife, tree types,
Geology.
geology.
The things that you pointed out about the boulders that were moved that are not of this area and must have come through on
Erratics.
by glacier.
Yep.
And just deposited there, so that's
That-
pretty cool in itself.
So that piece, that education piece was actually what Jack Spiegel wanted his endowment money to support, which was
Excellent.
conservation education outreach in the form of a kiosk. It's a good question, Marley, though, because you think, most people who use Morgan Meadow probably just go out there for a hike and know it all and know where the trails are, but this would,
You'd have to pass it anyway, wouldn't you?
you'd walk by it, yes, you would, yeah. All right, well, that's good for an hour-long conservation meeting on a Tuesday night. Anybody else have anything to add
Did you all hear lots of thunder?
or subtract? We did hear some
Did
thunder.
you-
I have one. The Red Sox are ready to begin a new record
Okay.
of wins.
No
What
good.
record is
Good,
that?
good. Well, if our only remaining topic is baseball, we
Move to
can,
adjourn?
we can cover that offline, I imagine. So we'll take a motion to adjourn.
I
So
move that we adjourn.
All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Good, thanks, everybody.
Were you
Where's that?